Okay, so I wanted to do a real quick video on 3 and 4 link setups. I've had a bunch of people ask me how I set mine up, and you know, like my anti-squat numbers and stuff like that. You know, this is kind of a debated and contentious topic, but you know, I'll share what I did. I feel like well, let me start at the beginning. So this is built for Ultra 4 Racing 4500 class. Not that that really matters, but so it's built to be able to go as quick as possible through the desert, you know, like a desert racing scenario, and crawl good as well. And I feel like I hit a really good compromise. So first thing is I did not use the link calculator. I don't agree with some of the concepts in that thing. But again, everybody's got their own opinion. So part of what I did is for maintenance and, you know, on trail or racetrack repair, all 4 of my lower links are identical. So I can carry 1 spare and it fits in any position. The front is a 3 link. So you can see, I'm gonna point with my foot, lower link bolt. This bolt goes all the way through the inner bracket and through the frame, through a sleeve. This is the pivot for my upper link in the front. And I'm outside in the sun, so it's a little hard to see, but you know, trying to get a lot of travel in a Samurai is kind of tough, especially with a low ride height. So part of that is my link separation, which is basically the vertical distance in height between that bolt and that bolt. At my axles is 6 inches, which is a little on the low side. And then over here on the frame side, it's 4.5 inches. So I have a very minor, I'm gonna call it a taper of, you know, the links getting tighter together as they come to the frame. And that action, having that upper link and lower link come together, that gives you in the front anti-dive, which is when you get on the brakes hard, you know, a car typically wants to dive down in the front anyway, and more so with soft springs. And so with these links being tapered like that, the action of the brake caliper grabbing the rotor and wanting to spin up due to the rotation of the tire, this geometry will help fight that. But like if you were to plug these numbers into that link calculator, I've never done that, but it would have really low numbers, which in my opinion is what I wanted. I don't want external forces affecting my suspension. I want tires hitting bumps, you know, to be the main input that I'm worried about. And the rear is identical. It's got the same spread, the same 6-inch link separation at the axle and 4.5 at the frame. And again, that leads to a very low anti-squat value, which is as the ring gear, as the pinion gear is spinning from the drive shaft, it tries to climb up the ring gear, which tries to rotate the rear housing. And this tapered action of the links fights a little bit the vehicle coming down, you know, and squatting when you take off. And where I get my inspiration for designs like this is I look at the top tier of things, you know, trophy trucks. When you look at the fine pictures and look carefully, they have a very similar, I guess you'd call that a layout. Very low, watch out buddy, very low anti-squat values. And again, when you're on the gas and you're digging and chewing through whoops, I don't want that anti-squat action to basically increase the spring rate, because that's what it in effect does. I want this thing to hunker down and be able to keep the tires pushing forward, and that's only going to happen if they're easily allowed to follow the terrain. What else? The length. So the main things I try to shoot for is as long as practical, you know, the length of the links, and level at ride height. I feel like if you basically shoot for that, you're gonna be pretty solid. But you never want your spread to be larger on the frame side than it is the axle side. You always want either parallel or closer together on the frame side. Closer, farther away, and then opposite in the front. Closer, farther away. So the front, like I said, is a 3-link. So there's my upper link mount. Strap in the way, but you can see the frame, or the link runs down the frame, and that bolt head sticking out there. It's got like a 9-inch long bolt, goes through the bracket and through a sleeve in the frame, and then the rears are those pockets there. I chose to use urethane bushings on the frame side and these like Johnny joint style joints on the axle, and honestly that was a mistake. If you're going to use this style of link, they do not have enough twist in them to only have one. You need one on each end. So these are going to be replaced soon with Heim joints. The problem is when the car articulates hard, this bottoms out and it turns it in the link, and so they end up loosening up the jam nuts. So what I end up doing is tightening the jam nuts, not super tight, just kind of snug so that the threads can't rattle or be loose, and I tack weld the jam nuts so they can't loosen any farther. That's kind of a temporary measure until I get these all replaced with Heim joints. The Heim joints have almost double the misalignment angle. But anyway, and same thing with the steering. You know, long and level steering, and you can see tucked in behind it is my track bar or panhard bar. You know, from pivot to pivot, they're the same length and they're the same angle, and they're on the same plane. The same plane doesn't matter as much, but it does matter a little. But being the same length and the same angle is the most important part. So the front, single link on this side, single lower link, and then one top link. So those three bars control the axle movement front to rear and twist. And then the track bar controls the side-to-side movement. And then by having those two bars match, the drag link and the panhard bar, or the track bar, keeps you from having bump steer. And in the back, it's got the single link on each side, the lower, and then on top, this is what's called a wishbone style 3-link. So it has like what's basically like an A-arm, 2 pivots on the frame, and coming back to a single point on the axle. And so the 3 bars, like the front, control the axle moving this way and twisting, and then this being the shape of a triangle, this bar does 2 jobs. Is it controls, you know, the rock this way, forward and back as I'm sitting, and it can't move this way either. I'm kind of a fan of this system because it's very simple, and it's easy to make it really strong. You can see where my tubes come together. got the weld-in bung, and then the corner has got a big tie-in. It's got a tube going side to side and then 2 triangle plates. And then my upper pivots have pockets inside the frame, and then same as the front link, they've got really long bolts to go all the way through the frame. So those are really solid. Because this wishbone, it sees a lot of force, because it's anytime you're getting sideways in a corner and then hitting ruts or whatever, there's a huge amount of load pushing this joint side to side. And then another thing you always gotta consider is, and in this car, if this is not ideal, is your drive shaft angle. You can see the driveline angle is definitely not matching the links. There's really nothing around that in my case. If I could have raised these points higher in the chassis, but what that would have done is made the car less stable. Because if these bars are at an angle heading downhill, as they go up, they also go backwards some, which will push the axle that way and make the rear axle steer a little bit. So basically what happens is if your drive line is at a different angle than your links, is your slip yoke is going to move in and out more. So I had these drive shafts built with long travel slip yokes. And again, this is not ideal, but in my case, it was a better compromise than adjusting the links to match. Because the transfer case in this is in the stock position. I want to keep it as high and tight as possible. And, there's basically nothing I can do about it. If I had like high pinion third members, that would help, but that doesn't exist in the Suzuki world. Trying to think what else. In my car's particular layout, this class, I'm limited to 14-inch travel coilovers. They could be shorter, but that's the longest you can have. And I wanted to be able to use every inch of that travel, and it does. So my axle actually, on a Samurai up in here, you have like the little bump stop pad, which hangs down a little below the frame, and then you got the bump rubber. Not including, like, if you take out my bump stops, the axle almost hits the frame. So I have about an inch more up travel than stock. I mean, not up travel, but its limit is an inch higher than stock. I have my front shocks centered at right height, so I have 7 inches of up travel and 7 inches of droop. And then the rear, I have 9 inches of up travel. And the rear has a little more travel because the shocks are tipped. I'm trying to remember the droop. 16 total. So 7 inches of droop. And if you're trying to go fast, you always want more up travel in the rear than you have in the front by, like 25% if you can. Because especially in a short wheelbase rig, they tend to buck when you hit things hard. And so if the front, let's say you had more front travel than rear travel, the front's going to absorb the bump, and then the back's going to bottom and really buck it up. And so by having less front travel and with the valving right and spring rates, you can get the front to kind of pop off things, and then it's more likely to kind of fly straight and level. Sorry for the delay here. I'm trying to think what else to cover. Like, I had some questions and I didn't take any notes of what to cover. I'm just winging this off the top of my head. But again, I think it's worth I don't think it's worth getting all hung up on these anti-squat values. Oh, that's another thing. A lot of like these kind of rules of thumb, people talk about like your upper links being like 70 to 80% the length of the lowers. I don't know where that comes from. I think that's dumb. Because you can run into big trouble if you've got a lot of wheel travel and your upper link is considerably shorter like that, because they're gonna, the top link is gonna swing such a short arc compared to the bottom that, like, say this is your two pivots. You want this to be like a nice smooth, slightly rocking backwards as it droops, and same thing as it goes up. With a short upper link, you'll start getting this, and then that upper link is going to start swinging in faster, and so then your pinion's going to drop towards full droop. So every link system I've built, I always make my lowers and uppers the same length, or very close to, because I want this motion to be very smooth and not have like a weird like inversion at the bottom. And again, like I'm a big fan of you know, low anti-squat and anti-dive values, and not, you know, let the springs and the shocks do all the control. And again, like if you look at trophy trucks, and even on the other spectrum, high-end rock buggies, like vehicles that like Jesse Haynes builds, if you look at those carefully, you'll see the links are basically the same length, and they have a pretty minor taper as they go towards the chassis. So that's my 2 cents. You know, again, I'm not a college educated engineer, but I have studied this for, you know, I've studied suspension since I was literally a kid, and I've been building this stuff for about 20 years. I think I've done pretty well at it, but those are my ideas. And again, like to make this as simple as possible, keeping everything level at right height is kind of the best place to start. On one thing that really helps that on a rig, I didn't really point that out. As you can see, my link, the tabs aren't hanging below. Like on a lot of OEM vehicles and other builds, you see the tabs hang off the bottom of the axle. Mine are in line, so that helps bring the axle end of the link up. And it also gives you more ground clearance. You can see the link does not hang below the tube at all. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to add. I see a lot of guys buy the universal brackets to build their setups. I'm not a fan of that, because unless you have a Jeep or something that's kind of cookie cutter and proven, I find you spend more time modifying and cutting up these universal parts to make them work, more time than you would spend just to build them right yourself for that application. So that's kind of what I prefer to do. You know, I have a CNC plasma, which really, you know, helps me out a lot, but I've only had that the last couple of years. So I would cut all these kind of parts out on a little vertical bandsaw, or, I mean, you can use anything, cut off wheel, doesn't matter. Especially on a Samurai, like all these parts are so big, it would be pretty tough, I think, to make them really work out. But again, that's just my 2 cents. So it's pretty windy out here. Hopefully you can hear me well through all this, but I'm gonna try to get some footage of this thing running soon. I'm waiting for the little rallycross series to kick off for this the summer season. I'm gonna try to get more footage this year of me running it. But that's it. If you've got any questions, need any advice, or any you got input to add or different ideas, share them in the comments. And thanks for watching.